Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits. A couple weeks ago, we got over 20 inches of snow, and I still have a lot of snow in my yarn that is untouched by creatures because it's deep enough that even Indy can't run around through it. But I thought it would be fun to try to snow dye on a t-shirt. Now, I want to use one of Dharma's fiber reactive ice dyes. These are Procyon dyes that are developed to break when you sprinkle them on top of ice. And I have created shirts with these with amazing success. But I want to make one for myself. And since I already have a soda ash mixture ready to go, and I'm curious to see whether snow can create a similar effect on a t-shirt. So let's get to it. I will be honest, one of the reasons why I'm doing this project today is that I have a soda ash mixture made already, in addition to the snow. But I figured I'll be able to set everything up in one of these little containers. The snow on top of the shirt and the dye on top, and then I can even pop a lid on. So I think it'll be nice and contained. Now, right here is a soda ash mixture. It started with a 1/4 cup of soda ash in 4 cups of water, and I've used it for a few other projects so far, which has given it this sort of yellowish color to it. Now, you can reuse your soda ash mixture over and over. This t-shirt I pre-soaked in just the washing machine. I put it through like a wash and spin cycle, so it was damp already. And I could be ready to go right now, but I am gonna need to wait for tomorrow because that's when I will be setting up to use dyes again. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let this shirt soak in the soda ash mixture overnight. In the past, when I've done ice dyeing on shirts, I have layered the dye powder on top of ice and then added soda ash powder on top of that. This time I'm using this soda ash pre-soak on the shirt, which may change the way our results happen, especially as the snow melts and it dilutes the amount of soda ash on the shirt. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm curious, and so we'll find out. Now, probably only a couple minutes soak in here would be necessary. I don't think we need to wait overnight, but I am waiting overnight because that's what my schedule's allowing, and this will be a reminder for me tomorrow when I'm playing with my fiber reactive dyes that I wanted to do this project. Just being honest about the logistics behind my decisions today. It is the next morning, and hopefully I don't have any dye on my gloves from another project I was working on. That would be most unfortunate. But I'm gonna squeeze out most of the liquid, leaving some behind. And I guess I'm gonna set the soda ash aside. I don't know if I will be reusing this again or if I'm done with it now, but I want to arrange my shirt in this box. And I want the front of the shirt, okay, good, that V-neck to be on top. And I'm really trying to randomly scrunch it in here on the bottom of the container. But now I need to try to go get some snow. Outside in my yard, you can see very clearly where Indy has gone and where he has not gone. Oh goody, it's still very powdery. Everything I'm using is dedicated for dyeing yarn and is never used for the preparation of food. I had no idea how icy the snow might be, and so I figured that this like pasta tongs I got for dyeing yarn could come in handy. Okay. I want like a reasonable layer on here, but this seems pretty good. Please excuse that phone footage. I didn't want to try to bring the whole DSLR out and try to prop it up in the snow. I figured that would be harder than it might be worth. But now let's go put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves and start adding on our dye powder. But I suppose, okay, let's even it out. All right, this is such that I'm going to be able to pop a lid on it, which is pretty darn cool. Now I have our alchemy dye here. Normally I might do this with my fingertips, but today I'm feeling doing this with just the dye. Now, unlike using an ice dye on top of ice, what's going to happen as the snow melts? Like, some amount of the dye will end up all over our shirt because I don't have it raised up in any kind of way to let any color sort of drip through or break through. That is not something that I'm able to do. But you can see I'm adding a lot of pigment, multiple scoops of powder from here. And so as this dissolves, it should start to sink through the snow at least. Now the powder itself is looking very brown. And I believe where it lands a lot of times on the shirt, it does end up having a brown feel. I know that there's red in it, and does it say? Yeah, there's a little tea. I know that there's some turquoise in it. But these dyes may separate as they work their way through the snow, in addition to how they land and come into contact with the shirt. The fun thing about a clear container is that we're going to be able to see a little bit what's happening on our shirt along the sides. And maybe because it's a corner, but slowly some of these dyes are starting to sink through and into the snow a little bit. Probably melting the snow some as it dissolves, because the top of the snow I can say is already looking a little bit pitted when it was fairly smooth at the start. So I'm not entirely sure how things may change as time goes on. Gosh, but I want to give one more side view of the top, and I'm not sure if you can see some of those valleys that are forming, and I can see some of that powder really working its way down into a crevice. I don't think that's showing up on camera well. From this angle, maybe you can see the little mountain over here and a bit of a valley running through it. Very fun, but I think I want to leave the camera right here, where we can see that the dye is just starting to come below this ridge on the shoebox. There is one spot over here where it's going down a little further. It's snaking down a little bit, making its way down towards the shirt. So let's go ahead and wait 30 minutes and see how much things have changed in that time. But one last thing I am going to do is pop a cover on. The cover should not be touching any of the snow. This is just so that way, if a breeze comes through, none of that dry dye powder gets kicked up. But I'll see you in 30 minutes. Ooh, after 30 minutes, I'm seeing some significant changes. One of them, do we see a little bit of condensation? Oh, maybe on the outside. But the dye, I can't tell if it's hitting the shirt yet, but the dye is nearing the bottom and maybe is just barely starting to come in contact with the shirt. But it has almost made its way through the snow. Ooh, I see some spots. I'm seeing the first contact with our shirt. And is that breaking? I see shifting of color. Ooh. Oh man. Okay, so this didn't take so long. Now I am anticipating that all of the dye has dissolved. So I did not put my mask back on. And I am mostly right. In the deepest crevices in here, which it's so funny that you can't really see the shape of the surface. I don't think that the camera is really picking that up. Because what is happening down there is very deep and pitted. Maybe it'll be easier to tell in a couple of hours that the areas with the most dye have really sunk down and melted that snow. But this is super exciting. And it's interesting that, I mean, maybe it's just some of the brown dye, but I think that some of the brown colors that I've seen before might be what hits the yarn towards the end and spreads less. But I am starting to see color spread into the shirt, which is very, very exciting. I guess all we can do is wait. And maybe I'll check in after a couple of hours. I think I'm gonna leave this here on the counter mostly. But as we wait, I have a few thoughts. I had no idea how well this might or might not work, how much breaking we will see. Because the difference between snow, where the dyes can kind of just sink through, and yes, snow is a collection of little ice particles, and so the liquid will make its path down. The difference between that and ice, where the dye can sort of dissolve and then slide around the sides of the ice, creating pathways that are bigger, maybe? I don't know how much of a difference that might make. And if you want to create something similar to what I'm doing here, but don't have snow, conceivably you could use and make your own crushed ice in like a blender or something to have a similar type of effect. But it also probably depends on how wet your snow and things are. So I know, hopefully by the time this video comes out, snow is done for the season. Although actually, who knows when this video will come out. It'll probably be a backup that I'll post sometime when I need it. But yeah, I'm excited enough that I decided to go ahead and do a snow dyeing on yarn project, which I imagine actually will come out before this particular video ever does. So I'm excited that I've been inspired to try that again. It's noon now, and I'm not gonna do a ton of check-ins, but ooh, oh, this looks different. Okay, I think now you can really see, it looks like I took a finger and poked through the snow in multiple places. But look at this tapestry of color that we have on the snow. Some brown that maybe isn't as soluble. I see a little bit of red down there. And then we have a bunch of blues. Oh, that's cool. And slowly you can see the colors are going into the shirt more. There's still a lot of white though. But clearly we also have a lot of dye that is mixed in with the snow. And so, gosh, I mean, whether or not we bring in more liquid at some point, that I don't know. But I have a feeling we have a few more hours for things to continue to melt here. I know that I keep my house pretty cold, and so it may take a while. I'm just gonna have to be patient. It was about 12:30 when I started to notice that we have some liquid at the bottom of the container. There's still a lot of snow on top. It's starting to shrink away from the edges a little bit. Like down here you can see through to the shirt. Ooh, we're getting some brown over there. That's cool. And so it's really good to see that there's liquid towards the bottom. Not all the liquid has dye in it though, which is interesting. But this does mean that we're likely to get coverage, which has me happy. It's almost 2 p.m. The snow is getting smaller. Ooh, I see some brown on the shirt and some green. Cool. Cool, cool. And I do still see some white around the edges, but there is more pigment to go down. It's about 4:45, and I think all of the snow is gone. Now, I know this all looks very dark and purple, but I am pleased to share that the underlayer is very, very blue. Maybe even a little bit of white. I have no idea if this will be mostly the back of the shirt or if the effort I made to scrunch will work. I just know that I'm gonna need to very carefully let this sit for a couple of days for the color to set. And actually, there are some whites on the bottom still. What I might do is tomorrow I might move the shirt around to get some color on those white sections. Ooh, but I see like purple and green. I am really excited for this. But I think I'll wait until tomorrow because then it'll be light blue that we move if any color goes on at all. So I'll set it aside. It has only been 24 hours and I'm planning on letting this go longer. But when I checked the bottom, I still see a little bit of some white. So what I'm going to do is just sort of lift it carefully with the spoon and let the color kind of move under it a little bit and get back down there. And that is all I planned to do. Just that little bit of wiggle. Actually, a little bit more. This is the spot where we have the most like white. Because at this stage, like there's probably a lot of color in here that will rinse out, but why not get a little bit of blue over there? Because this is ultimately my shirt, right? And I want what I want. It is Monday morning. I am just now removing the lid. And oh my gosh, things look so dark. But as we are gonna wash it a bit before we like look at the pattern, there's a little bit of dye on the sides, which is fine. I'm not that worried about backstaining, but there's no harm in adding some soap now. We know there's going to be a lot of color because there was color in the water. And that is all color I'm not going to want to like stay in my sink for very long. So I'm going to work on rinsing that down. Okay, just because we do have a reasonable amount of soda ash. Now I'm using cold water right now for the rinsing. And it's going to be hard to look at it, but this is so cool looking right now. The concern I have is that I now have two experiences with this color where the colors seemed pretty intense at this stage. And then after I was done rinsing it out and it dried, the colors felt a lot less intense. So one of those was when I speckled with it on, I think it was probably a cotton linen blend maybe. I speckled with this color. And then it felt like a lot of the color sort of rinsed out and disappeared. But then later I attributed that to the fact that I had used heat to try to set those speckles. But then the second time is I dyed some yarn with 1 gram of this dye in like a sandwich bag. And when I rinsed it out, the colors were not what I expected. So I like that green in there. So I really don't know what to expect here. But what I do have is a tie-dye t-shirt. I mean, it's soapy right now. I'm not seeing a lot of purples yet, but that could be because it's wet. I'm seeing a lot of like green and brown, maybe a hint of purple. We'll need it to rinse. This is really cool looking though. I do know that Lucas's shirt turned out super cool. Which is the reason why I wanted to do this on a shirt for myself. Now, it's a different brand shirt, and conditions are different. I use snow instead of ice, and so the way that the color deposits is a little bit different because the snow had to kind of completely melt to apply all the dye, whereas with ice, as it melted, there was a point where there would be ice on top of the fabric, but all the dye had already slid off the outside. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider, is that I didn't have it outside where it was like 80 to 90 degrees. I had it indoors where it was like 60 to 65 degrees. But I'm not seeing a ton of white, which has me thrilled because I did not want a lot of white this time. I wanted those patches of the bright blue. Now, unlike when I'm dyeing yarn, this I'm going to be able to go and put in my washing machine and start washing up there. But I do like to try to get like the majority of the bleeding taken care of before I go ahead and do that. And I think we're probably around that type of place. Now, with tie-dye t-shirts, in fiber reactive dyes, the color is going to be permanent eventually. However, because cotton is so absorbent, it can take some time for all those colors to bleed, and there is a chance of some staining coming from that. So what I like to recommend is that with tie-dye shirts, wash them on their own, like, or with super dark colors for the first like big handful of times. And then once you're satisfied with that, hey listen, hot water is making a different color come off. That's interesting. Maybe that pigment that is slower to go through the fibers, maybe that is not as soluble. And so that's why we see that one bleeding in hot water. I don't know. But either way, I'm going to take this upstairs and start washing with laundry soap soon. I was just curious what hot water would do. But I still will wash on its own just because I don't want to turn something a different color. But I am so excited to see what this is going to look like. Oh my gosh. But at this stage, I think it's got some really, really cool patterns. Very different, I think, from what I got with the ice dyeing, and maybe less breaking. But someday I will do one of these, or probably a different t-shirt. I will probably do an ice dyed one to see what I think. But anyway, I will see you once I have the shirt dry. But right now, it feels very saturated. Here is my finished t-shirt. Now, I really like it. This one kind of bald patch bothers me a tiny bit. I don't think it'll feel as big. Oh good, I'm glad there's some color on the edge. I don't think it'll feel as big of a deal when I'm wearing it. But I do wish, I mean, it just meant that I didn't have, most of that section was done on the bottom versus on the top. But I love the patterning, how you can feel the folds, and that like within each of these areas we have this like brown, green, and purple. I think it is so, so beautiful. And I am just really, really excited. It's really, really cute. I still wish that I had a little bit more scrunching on this side, but I think that the whole thing is fun and vibrant, and we got so many different colors in it that I want to use ice dyes on more things. And I'll have an opportunity to do this because I like to send my kids to camp in tie-dyed t-shirts, because then A, they're bright and fun, and B, if they get really dirty and messy, which they do at camp, then I'm not worried about stains because it just kind of all works together. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and would you like to see me dye more fabric, or do you prefer that I stick to yarn that most of my content is built on? Really, it's no problem, but I would film more of my tie-dyeing projects if you guys want to see more of that this year. I suppose one thing I'm gonna redo are some shirts for my 20th college reunion coming up, and just so my kids can be in my class colors. Oh, but it's so fun, so much fun. I wish that when I dyed yarn with ice dyes, we could get something this dramatic. But part of the reason why it is so dramatic on fabric is that you have a continuous surface here. When you get this kind of breaking on yarn, it can still be super beautiful and fun, but you don't quite see like the patches and these like little shapes that come from the way the dyes moved through. The nebula, it's like nebulas, right? And so that doesn't quite happen on yarn, because when you have one strand of yarn, yes, you can have the colors in there, but you don't have like this overall effect from using one color on some fabric. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I post at least twice a week. And if you want to support the channel, head over to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. Pre-orders for the 2026 Spring Mini Skein mini-series are available, and that series will be so much fun. It starts on June 15th, where we'll have nightly videos focusing on dyeing mini skein sets and sock blanks, basically creating things that are gradients or asymmetric, and just sets of colors that can work together in one project. I will have the listings linked down below. Thank you so much for watching.